to the cloud. I'm just going to do it to the computer. All right. So welcome to Critical Race Studies in Education's first episode of a webinar series that we're working on developing as part of our membership benefits. And this first inaugural webinar is centered on our call for proposals for the 2020 conference, which we are getting very excited about, and it's keeping us quite busy. We are scheduled to be at the University of Delaware May 20th of 2020 for our pre-conference, and May 21 and 22 for the two conference dates is when we have most of our programming. So that's just a little reminder for most of you, but maybe for some folks who don't have those dates in their calendar yet. For our call, we are hoping to close our submissions November 22nd of 2019. So that's also an important date to remember. We do leave the call open, or the submission portal open, till midnight in all time zones, basically. So as long as you get it in before midnight in your time zone, you'll be good. And if we do decide to extend it, which we have done in previous years, if we think we need more proposals, then of course we will let the membership know and send notices on social media and whatnot. But right now, we're being optimistic to close the call November 22nd. And the most important part about that is to get the review going, not just because we want to close it, but to get that review process started. So I'm going to back up and introduce myself because I kind of jumped right into business. And it's kind of awkward just, kind of talking to a computer, but it's all good. So I'm Erica Davila. I am the president for the Critical Race Studies in Education Association currently. And last year I served as vice president, which comes along with the role of program chair. And my counterpart, Enrique Aleman, who is program chair, will jump in just a minute here and introduce himself. Just a little bit about me. Native from Chicago, where actually Critical Race Studies was born, so it's pretty awesome. Kind of full circle for me. I started going to the conference as a graduate student when I was studying between Champaign and Chicago, Illinois. And now, to be on leadership is really just a blessing. I did have a stop out for a few years because of my teaching load. But I've been kind of part of CRSEA in lots of ways since its inception. So it really is, like I said, a blessing to be part of the leadership. I teach at Lewis University, which is right outside of Chicago, in the suburb of Romeoville, where I'm in a EDD program in educational leadership, and I work with some aspiring school leaders, community leaders across the Chicagoland area. And I've been back home since 2015. And before that, I spent almost 10 years on the East Coast in Philadelphia, mostly doing teacher education work and lots of student teaching supervision, which is why I couldn't keep up with all the conferencing that, us scholars have to do. So it is really nice to be able to balance that better in my new position, even though I do miss being in classrooms as much as I used to be. So we are really excited for this webinar to talk about the call and get into some of the logistics about how to actually submit your proposal, how it's reviewed, and then talk a little bit about the actual content of the call to give you an idea of maybe how to shape projects that you're currently working on to fit the call for proposals this year. And so what I'll do is I'll pause here, I'll let Enrique introduce himself, and then maybe we could jump into some of the details of the call.
Great. Dr. Davila, thanks for starting us off. Myself too, as was mentioned, I'm a vice president for the organization this year. Super excited about being part of this group of the executive board. Similarly, I had been really connected to CRSEA early in my career. I finished up at UT Austin, and then as a grad student, it was all the scholars were just starting to get together. And so right when I became a junior scholar, moved to the University of Utah. We were very fortunate there to have a critical mass of critical scholars. For me, it was like a dream job because number one, I got a job and I could get paid. And number two, I was at a Research One institution. And number three, the scholars that were in that area. I mean, I was super, super lucky as a junior scholar. I think it was a couple years after it started, we had the conference in Salt Lake City. And so I got really connected that way. And we were able to have a very successful conference there in Utah. Went to a couple other ones. And as it happens in the junior scholar, life, when you have to pick between conferences and trying to figure out ways to get published. And then the fact that I think for me, I always struggled, especially as a junior scholar, because I would go to NOX, which is the National Association Chicano Studies Conference. That's always in April. Then I would go to AERA. That's in April. And then CRSEA happens in May. So for me, for a couple of years, it was hard to do all three of them. And at some point, you have to pick and choose. And so at this stage of my career, I'm now a tenured professor at the University of Texas in San Antonio. I'm a faculty member in the Department of Educational Leadership and Policy Studies, as well as the department chair. And so I felt like at this stage of my life, I really just wanted to get back into the organization, had a good opportunity I feel very fortunate to be elected as a vice president to work with the group of scholars that are on the board. So that's kind of my experience. I think at UT Austin, I didn't always have access. We didn't have critical race scholars. And I remember the department chair also became my advisor as a grad student. I was very fortunate that Dr. Jay Scribner hired Larry Parker into an assistant professorship right when Larry graduated at Temple. So because of that, I was reading what was new at the time that was coming out of critical race theory work. And Dr. Scribner says, you need to talk to Larry. And so at one AERA, he introduced me to Larry Parker. We went to a jazz club. And I got a chance to meet him, and he agreed to be on my committee. And so now we're very fortunate, I think, to have this space where we can meet every year. And so I'm very much looking forward to playing the role that Larry did for me. I want to use my 16th year in the academy, trying to use my network and trying to use whatever I can bring to the table to help junior scholars, grad students, and scholars who just want to do this kind of work. It's very exciting. I was at USC last year, and we had a great turnout. And we've had a lot of good conversations thus far. I think University of Delaware is going to be very much a great partner, a collaborator. There's some scholars there already we're going to talk about them. They're already doing cutting edge work. And so they're bringing their all their talent, and then the institution has stepped up. And so we're very much looking forward to going to the East Coast and reaching out to not only people who've gone to the conference, but broadening that. So that's where I'm at.
Thank you, Dr. Aleman. That was so helpful. And I didn't even realize that connection. Dr. Larry Parker was my first CRT professor in Champaign. Yeah, so he introduced me to the world of CRT. Yeah. So it really is a full circle. And I couldn't agree more, with the idea of mentorship. Actually, one thing I'll just do a quick plug. We have a new group, subcommittee of our membership group working on mentorship right now. And so all of you on the call and who will maybe hear this recording, will be getting different notices about our new mentorship initiative, which, like I said, we're really excited about. And Larissa Maloney is the one heading that up. So one thing I did want to say before we jumped into the call, I just want to echo what you just said about the University of Delaware and how they've kind of jumped on board. We've been receiving a lot of really great updates around the support that we're getting from the institution, and just all the details around, rooms that we need and the things that seem minute, but they're really important because they drive our program, right? So depending on the number of slots we have, that determines how many papers we can accept. And so it's all very interconnected. And so we're really, really excited, and we definitely want to build off the energy that we had in Southern California last year, where we had our biggest turnout for the conference thus far. And so as program chair, I was really, really excited. But I also knew that a lot of it had to do with the fact that there's just a lot of folks doing the work in that region. But it's all good. We welcome them with open arms. And so I'm going to jump into some numbers that I think are important. I also shared them in the business meeting. So if you were there in May, this might sound familiar, but it's a good refresher. So we had last year 299 proposals submitted. 77 of those were placed in roundtables, and 144 papers were accepted for concurrent sessions, which made our acceptance rate right around 74%, which was significantly higher than 2018, where we were only able to accept about half, about 50% of the submissions, because we didn't have the space and it was a lot of moving parts. It wasn't not to point fingers at the space or anything like that. It was just the reality of the numbers and the number of proposals we got and the space we had. And we were using roundtables a little differently in 2018. And in 2019, we expanded those significantly. We only had about 6 or maybe 12 papers in 2018 that were roundtables versus the 77 last year. And this year we'll probably have even more. And so that's just a little context about our acceptance rate. And my goal is not to have a lower acceptance rate. And so it's kind of problematic because we just don't know how many proposals we get. And of course, I'm of the camp that believes the more we get, then the higher quality will be that percentage of accepted papers. So I'm going to share my screen. So bear with me for a minute here. As I turn off my camera and share my screen. Okay. Does that look okay? Somebody confirm?
Yes, that works. Okay. Yes, that works.
Great. Let me see if I could just do a full screen here. Maybe that'll even be better. So what I did was I just put together a few bullet points really to keep myself on the topic here, and I thought they were really important. So once all of you that decide to submit a proposal, I wanted to talk a little bit about the review process. So each of the reviewers are asked to score each proposal from 1 to 5. So the way our online system works is it's a star thing. They give you like 1 to 5 stars. They can give an in-between. So we've had like 2.5s, 3.5s, for example, because it's an average. So, depending on how the different reviewers give you feedback. We also encourage narrative feedback, obviously explaining why the 1 or the 2 or the 3 or even the 5. However, we do require that reviewers that, or I should say proposals that earn less than 3 stars are given some kind of narrative feedback. And even though it's a lot of labor, because we really do appreciate the work of the reviewers, because it is a volunteer thing. And of course, if you're interested in reviewing, there'll be a call for reviewers that comes out. So basically what we did in the program committee last year and with some of the executive board's help is the proposals that didn't have enough narrative feedback, we went back and provided extra reviews to make sure that people had something instead of just a number. So that's something that we're working on, both encouraging people, reviewers to give more feedback, but also in our system, making sure that it's clear and people know how to do that, because there was some confusion last year. So once that average score is given to each proposal, and then the program committee kind of compiles those accepted proposals into the program. So you will, if your proposal is accepted, you'll get an invite. So it's not an assumed your proposal is accepted. We put you in the program. So there's an extra layer where we, say, your paper's been accepted. Are you still interested in presenting? And then those ones that say yes are the ones that go into the program. We can't really have a cutoff number It will fluctuate every year depending on the space that we have available, and of course the scores of the actual proposals that we receive. So depending on the space and the scores, the program committee decides on a cutoff number. For example, in 2019, proposals with an average of 3 stars or higher were invited to present on panels. And those with at least 3 stars were invited for roundtables. So basically the 144 concurrent, those papers had at least 3 stars or higher. And then the 77 were all the, 3.0 to 3.9, so everybody in the 3 group. And even though we could have accepted, and you'll see this next bullet point, somewhat lower stars, because we really do center around the theme and the content. We have to do the number thing because it's an equity issue of making sure that we review everybody's proposal and give everybody a fair chance, but we also know that there's some room there. So if we see a proposal that is a really good fit for one of our themes and we're trying to round out a panel, then we will make an exception and ask the person if they will present, even if the score is lower. So I just want to understand.
For 30 minutes you can play soccer. For 30 minutes you can play sports.
Even if we use the numbers, that there's still a little wiggle room. And for, sorry, I should have put this ahead of this. These bullets should have been in a different order. For 2020, we're aiming to have at least 3 reviewers for each proposal. We tried that for 2019. We weren't able to get all of them 3, but we did get most, and we had some that only had 2 reviews. And then again, depending on space, because there's themes, and so when we're trying to organize that, we have placed papers that have a higher score, in a round table, and vice versa. So that's similar to the bullet, above, which talks about, if there's a lower score, because we do want the sessions to, tie together, and for the scholars to be able to have a conversation in that space, not just to be a number on the panel. So I just said these numbers here about 2019. We had 60 reviewers last year, which was actually double of what we had the year before. And those are mostly graduate students and faculty who do critical race work. Most of the people who volunteer are people who are already part of the association. And if there are new people, we try to do our due diligence, to make sure that they have published in the field, taught in the field, or maybe both. And we do really respect the perspective of those graduate students as reviewers. That has been a question that has come up in the past. We did try to have a faculty reviewer on even if it was just one on every proposal, but that is hard work, especially because we have almost half of our membership are graduate students, and we want to kind of keep it that way because we really believe in mentorship, and I shouldn't say keep it that way, I mean, it just depends, but just respecting that a lot of our membership are graduate students. So these are some of the things I copy and pasted straight from the call, the next few bullets. Please note that due to limited slots, we cannot accept proposals. So right now, we're not accepting panels or symposia because we want to be able to accept more individual papers. But that's something that we may move to in the future. Every year we have a new program chair. So we know that every year there's slight changes that happen. And so for now, we decided to keep it the same as last year, which is individual papers that the program committee specifically will compile into panels. But if anybody has any questions about that, you can reach out to me and we'll make sure that we share our contact information at the end of the webinar. The next bullet point is about multiple submissions, which we do get a lot of, and we are happy to get people who are doing multiple projects should definitely submit their work. However, note that we are limiting folks to be sole or lead / first author for no more than 2 of your proposals. So basically, if you're submitting more than 2, you should not be the first author on more than 2. So you could still be a second or third or fourth author. And we ask that each paper only be submitted to one topic strand. So, or stand, I should say strand, sorry. When we get to the actual call, you'll see those different strands that are listed on our call. So that's what that's referring to. And I do want to say one note about, because I said, third, fourth author, as somebody who works in collectives, we encourage, if you're working in a collective, for you to put all the authors. This has come up, especially with people who do participatory action research or different kind of PAR work. So definitely include your whole research team. There's not a word limit. Everybody should be recognized, even if not everybody's presenting. You can note that. So there really isn't a limit, but know that, because of time, that, everybody might not be able to speak. But if there are multiple people on your research team, absolutely include them on that submission. And then finally, this is a question that comes up a lot. So right now, we don't have the capacity to review full papers. But we do encourage you to see this as a step towards a publication, whatever that means in your respective discipline and field. But we see it as part of a bigger scholarly project, even though we're only asking for a 500-word description. So that really depends on each, individual's kind of project and where they're going with it. But that's something that we want you to consider as you submit. That description should be based on what most traditionally would be considered like a publication, but not necessarily. So the last thing I want to share here is what the reviewers use to score. So this is right now what we have are these 3 categories, if you will. So the first one is technical quality. The idea is addressing theory, practice, and our methods in critical race studies are clear. So basically that has to do with your writing style and making sure that your sentence structure, your grammar is not getting in the way of your message. And then the next one, analysis, which I think is the heart of the proposal. The proposal clearly demonstrates the author is centering race as primary mode of analysis with key principles, concepts, and methods connected to critical theories of race, including but not limited to critical race theory. There are clear linkages between the information and the questions, each topic under consideration. So as you're putting together your proposal, if you're working in a team, you all can check each other, but if not, maybe send it to a friend, a peer, who can think through these 3 kind of criteria and your proposal. That might be really helpful. But obviously we're being the critical race studies in education, we would really want to make sure folks are centering race, although other, of course, topics and analyses are welcome. Just always thinking about how are you really doing due diligence to the critical race studies part of the association and conference. And then finally, thinking about innovation and impact, right? Proposal submitted has a potential to introduce and or promote the development of new ideas, practices, methods, praxis, and or acquisition of new skills and knowledge for conference attendees. Traditionally, and this is something I didn't know as somebody who's first generation everything, the idea of conferences, right? And I learned this probably when I was in graduate school, is this idea of sharing this new knowledge, right? Which could be deconstructed in lots of ways, right? But generally speaking, right, thinking about how as scholars we're pushing our ideas to new areas of thinking and promoting the work. And so just asking yourself, is this something that folks have been saying and how am I saying it differently? That's actually one of the most common comments that I saw in the review process, that the reviewers would say, not sure there's nothing new, not sure there's anything new here, right? So really thinking about that and how I always tell my students, right, like context matters. So it's like, even if that topic's been done before, how are you kind of framing it in your specific context differently? I think it's just one, probably of many ways to think about that last innovation and innovativeness and impact. So I'm gonna stop there for a minute, and I do have more to share, but I just wanna check in and make sure I didn't lose folks. And then I have a couple screenshots that I want to share. So does anybody have any questions? Anybody want to jump in before I move on?
Can I just reiterate,
Sure.
as the program chair, I really appreciate that criteria. And I just want to encourage anybody that's interested. I think the 60 reviewers is an awesome number. And so we're going to try to hit that, at least that this year. I think it's extremely important for any organization. It's very important that we have a robust list of of reviewers, it's not good when the executive board or just a handful of people are making decisions for the program. The more perspectives, the more sets of eyes we get on it, I think it's better for grad students and for junior scholars. It's always great. It's a great way to build your CV. It's service to a national organization, and you actually learn how to become a better writer by the more reviews that you do. They're not real long proposals anyway, so it's not like we're not going to dump a whole bunch of them on you. But the more that people are willing to sign up, just go ahead and let me know, and I'm happy to add you to the list. If you're interested, I'm going to just plug it right now. If you're interested in the program committee, you can send me an email at enrique.aleman@utsa.edu. We're going to be having our first kind of Zoom meeting here pretty soon in November. And so if you're interested in helping to shape the program, I'm very interested in working with you. And so again, even with committees like that, shouldn't be a lot of heavy lifting because there's going to be a good number of people, but the more perspectives that we get, if you're interested in being part of that, along with the program reviews, with the proposal reviewers, it's going to be really important for the organization. So I wanted to throw that in there.
Thank you. And you actually made me think of one other important thing, which is the number of proposals. So we were trying to keep it to no more than 10 for each individual. Okay. So what we do is when we send out the ask, we say, that we're hoping you could review at least 10, but if not, we're open to folks doing less. And we have people take us up on it and say, I could only do a couple or I could only do 5, and that's fine. And then we had the opposite, which was really awesome. And actually, Dr. Parker was one of those people, and as a senior CRT scholar, I was thrilled. He was on sabbatical, and he said, send me more. And we send him more. And so we have people like Dr. Parker, like Dr. Stovall, who's a founder of Critical Race Studies, Theodora Berry. We have folks like that who review, and then we also have graduate students, right? So it runs the gamut. And I couldn't agree more about how much it helps with your own work, right, of conceptualizing and writing your own work. So it really is a great service to the association. And what we do is we actually hang on to ourselves for last call, right? So the e-board program committee, for lots of reasons, we try to let other folks do the reviews, and then if we need to fill in any gaps, that's kind of how we function, at least for the last 3 years, which is how long I've been on, leadership and helping with the program. So can't really speak before that, but that's kind of the practice that we try to maintain.
I do want to reiterate what you said also about the not allowing at this point any symposia or panels. And I really do agree with the philosophy behind previous executive boards, e-boards, in the sense that we're trying to get as many papers on the program. Especially early on in your career, it's really important that you're being able to be in these spaces. And since so much funding is tied to institutional funding is tied to being on the program, it would be easier if we had panels and symposium. People could just submit that and be easier to just to program it. But we really want to promote this idea of getting as many slots filled by individuals and doing it that way. I'm excited. We were able to tour the space at University of Delaware. It looks like we're going to have some flexibility. We're going to have it seems like there's more space to actually have more roundtables. And so although some people just might want to do a paper, I think with the roundtable, I was on a roundtable last year and it was really good. You guys were able to kind of put us together with 3 papers, and we had a really good conversation and got on the program. So we're excited about the space. We're excited about having the number of slots that we have. And now we're just trying to kind of get a list of reviewers so that we can really have a good number of perspectives and make decisions on this. And so at this point, we're not going to be doing any symposium panels, but that's one of the reasons for doing that.
Yes, thank you for that. All of that is so important, especially just, what you were saying about the roundtables, because we do have, last year the space was a little problematic, but we just made it work. And I heard really great things about it. But yeah, this year we do have a very nice big space. So I think we'll have lots of roundtables this year as well. And we have a question. I'm so excited about the interaction here. It's a really good question. The question is, can somebody submit a proposal and also review? And the answer is yes. So there is a way in the system where, you wouldn't get your own paper. So yes, we do have folks who have been played both roles. So if you're somebody who knows you're going to submit and still wants to serve as a reviewer, that's absolutely fine. It's a really good
There's more organizations that are moving in that direction too. Like I know in another organization that I'm part of, they won't allow you to submit a paper or proposal unless you're going to sign up to be a reviewer. So we don't have that. It's a good practice. I mean, it's part of your service. Since other people are reading your work to do a couple, I think that's good service that you're providing for the organization. For a group like ours, it's small, still relatively small. We're trying to grow it. The more interaction we get like that, I think it's a win-win for everybody.
Yeah, that's a good point, because we do value, and we struggle with that about our size. We're like, we like that it's small, but then it's also like we want to be welcoming, to more folks. So that's just something to think about. But yeah, that could be a model moving forward.
Yeah.
And thinking about folks who, do both. So I'm going to share a couple more things here around the submission process. So I have some screenshots, so bear with me while I share my screen again, and then I'll check the questions coming in a minute here. Oh shoot, sorry. I think I just opened the wrong thing. Okay, here.
Erica, the question can one volunteer on the program committee, even if I'm not yet a member of the association?
Yes. So right now, we're asking for folks who are interested in serving on various committees, but our membership drive, I don't know what to call it, but our membership registration really starts at the beginning of the year in January. So right now, if you were to become a member, your membership would expire December 31st. So we wouldn't encourage you to do that. If you're already a member, great. But what we will do is once the new year runs in January, we'll reach out to everyone, all of our membership, but of course people on committees, and encourage them, but we wouldn't make that mandatory, for you to have to, because we know that just don't get the institutional funding, but we're happy to have them serve in various committees. So yes, short answer is yes. So this is a screenshot of our webpage. And actually I was worried, how it is when you're online about Wi-Fi or whatnot. But if you go to our homepage and you go under, and I have another screenshot here. If you click on conference, you'll see a little drop menu. And then if you hover on call for proposals, you should see 2020 call for proposals. So again, if you're on the homepage, signed in or not, if you signed into the homepage before, most likely your browser is going to remember that. And so it might kind of want you to log in, which is fine. You can log in if you remember your username. If not, we can help you with that too. There's a real easy way to reset it. You could do it yourself as well. But if anybody ever had issues with that, we have a general email, just kind of an aside. It's CRSEA info at gmail.com. So I'll make sure that everybody gets that email. So if you ever need a password, whatever. So anyhow, if you've been in there, you can log in. Even if you're not a member, or you're never logged in, you can just kind of go in to conference. Again, hover over it, you'll see 2020. This might look a little different. For example, you'll see I have my review portal here because I was a reviewer. Most of you probably will see everything except that, unless you were also a reviewer in the past. And then once you click on 2020 call for proposals, this is what the form looks like. And so it's a very simple submission process. It's going to ask you to choose a theme. So these are spelled out in the call, which we're actually going to go to in just a minute here. The actual call, you'll see a description for each of these themes. It's really important that you think about which one your proposal speaks most to. We absolutely understand that some are going to speak across theme, and that's a beautiful thing. We actually organized some roundtables last year across themes that had really specific topics that were similar. So we see that synergy happening, but because of the navigation, like last year, basically 300 proposals, we have to have a way to organize them. And so let's say yours kind of goes across, youth resistance and community-driven politics. Choose one, whichever one you think is, the better fit, and just say that in the text. In the proposal text, you can say something like, this proposal touches on numerous submission themes, and we're happy to think about that if if we need to put you in another one. But really just think about which one is the most connected. So I'm gonna stop there for a minute and open up our website so we can see the call here. So what we did this year was we put the call right on the landing page, right? So wherever you are in the world, you should be able to put CRSEA.org. This is our homepage. And then if you just scroll down, you'll see our call. However, and this has to do with technology, it's not as clean as I'd like it to be because you can't just click on this. You have to go back up like I was showing you before in those screenshots. And then you have to go to conference, call for proposals, 2020 call, and then you're in the portal. So it is numerous steps. It's not as, again, as streamlined as I'd like it to be, but that's why we're doing this webinar. So you saw there how to get there again, conference, call for proposal 2020. So the text, again, whoops, sorry, I lost it. Sorry, y'all. The text for the actual, I'm gonna go back home, proposal. So in just a minute, Dr. Aleman's gonna talk through some of the call, but I just wanted to scroll all the way down because a lot of the stuff that I talked about is kind of at the bottom. Some of these logistics around, no more than 2 single author papers. Our themes that I just mentioned are all here, and there's blurbs for each of them. So again, when you're trying to find your fit of where to submit it, here are those 3 areas for review that we just talked about. So it's all here in Dr. Aleman's email as well. But I just kind of wanted to show you where it is. And way at the top, we have our dates, again, which we talked about at the beginning of this call. And so with all of that, I think I will give it to you, Dr. Aleman, if you want to talk about the call. And do you want me to leave this
shared?
You want to leave it up. You? It's up to you.
Yeah, you can leave it up. It'd be great. I was just wanting to be my first volunteer for the program. So that's great. Listening on it. Let me just say a few words because I think coming back into the organization, that I hadn't been part of for a while, and I'm trying to get to the page too. It was interesting to see how in the past it's worked. Like the incoming president of the organization comes up with the theme, and the incoming vice president then writes up the call for proposals. And so it was really it was absolutely my pleasure to meet Dr. Davila at USC and get a chance to chat with her and think about how she was going about thinking through this call, but then having the space and the freedom to be able to kind of interpret it. And so that's kind of how it works. I drafted it and shared it with the e-board and shared it with a few other scholars just to get their take on it to see if it made sense. But I was really inspired by this idea of the cultivating testimonials, really around this idea of joy, love, and struggle. Because I think, we all know the times that we're living in. And I think for a lot of us that do critical race scholarship and critical race praxis, there's quite a few that do collectivist work. They do community-based work, action research work. For many of us, this is very personal. The work that we do is very personal. And so what I appreciated about cultivating testimonials is actually about recentering our narratives, and it's about having spaces to be empowered, having spaces so that we can actually empower those that have been neglected, those that have been devalued, marginalized. And so it was actually an easy call to write because of that. And so I want to thank Erica for pushing us to think in that way. As you can tell from the very beginning, I was inspired. I've just always loved that quote by Derek Bell in his 1992 book. I've never forgotten that. It was very vivid the way he described during the 1960s during a civil rights march, and mentioning Mrs. McDonald as somebody who wasn't probably going to see a lot of changes happening. She was already an elder in the community and had already gone through a lot. But I love her resistance. I loved her empowered response about why she does what she does, why she was marching for voter rights. And again, given the times that we're living in, that quote, I needed to go find it. I knew I had read it and I had marked it, and I wanted to go find it to get it right, because that's really what inspired me. I think that people like that in our own communities, not only in the past but currently. I did mention the fact that the Black Lives Matter movement. I mentioned what continues to happen in around water in Flint and in Standing Rock at the same time. There are active resistors. There are active people, active leaders in our community that are struggling for change and for struggle. And so I think that that's kind of how this was written about in that spirit. Obviously, what happened in El Paso by this person who was, inspired by the rhetoric that's coming out of DC and across the country, really, but really coming out of DC, directly out of the White House, is something that I really wanted to put in there. And so in that spirit, also bringing in some of the current work from some educational scholars, Galo Bernal, Perez Huber, and obviously Dr. Davila has written work around testimonio. This is not all inclusive, but these women scholars, women of color scholars, also really inspired me. Dr. Bettina Love, with her most recent work, that's really kind of pushing the field to think in terms of abolitionist teaching, are pieces of work that I think that we can all learn from, whether you're in ed leadership or curriculum and instruction or any field of educational research broadly. I think they all kind of speak to our work. And so that's kind of something that kind of also touched me in a way that I wanted to write about. At the end of the day, I think what we're looking for, and as I compile the program committee, and just another plug, if you're interested, I already got one taker who's volunteering. So anybody else that wants to volunteer, my job is really to be as broad as possible and help the process work so that we can get papers that will help push the field. You don't have to include everything related to CRT, and it doesn't have to be only CRT. I mean, a lot of this work, like testimonial work, is transdisciplinary, and so I think that it doesn't have to. Sometimes I think that junior scholars try to do too much with it, or they try to use every single tenet of CRT and forcing it in there. You do have to do justice to the theoretical framework. I think it's going to stand out if you're not citing what you need to cite and really, kind of bringing in some of the foundational work. But yes, we want to push the field. We want to ask questions that we haven't gone to yet. And one of the beauties of being in this conference space is that it is small, and that you can talk to Stovall, and you can talk to Davila, and you can talk to Marvin Lynn and Dolores Delgado Bernal, and ask them about their work and help push your own work. And so we're looking for proposals that are about that. How does it align with the theme, but also how can you extend the work, the scholarly conversation around CRT? That's the exciting part that I think that I'm looking forward to working with some folks about. So we want conceptual papers, we want qual perspectives, we want community-based approaches, artistic, creative. I mean, there's always creative and artistic folks that want to bring a different lens to it, and absolutely we want to encourage that. And Erica mentioned the key areas that I won't go through, but this is sometimes the question I get a lot is, how do I make it fit into this one? And as she mentioned, I think the beauty of it is that most of our work is across these 5 areas. We're just asking you for your best guess at this point, where you feel that where it fits the best. It'll help us do our work in scheduling the program. But if we do see it fits nicely in somewhere else, and we want to get you on the program, we'll move you over. And so there is some built-in flexibility with that, and we do understand that it's not one or the other, that there's a lot that are across, a lot of proposals that are going to fit across these key areas and questions that you have on there. I think the last thing that I'll say about the call is that, you know, we want you to be authentic to your work, and so don't force fit it. The more that you can think in terms of aligning it to the theme will be important, because that is one of the areas that will, especially as it gets more and more competitive, that we will be seeing how it aligns. It makes our job easier also to kind of do the program. But we want your authentic voice, and that's definitely part of testimonial approaches, is your authentic voice in issues related to resistance and history, you know, counter storytelling and issues related to struggle. So as much as you can be in 500 words anyway, that you can be authentic to your voice and trying to push the field, that's really what we're going to be looking for. So I'll stop there.
Thank you. That was so helpful. And I couldn't agree more about kind of that joy of having the space to build the theme or the call, but not come up with the theme, yeah. Which is what I had to do last year. So you're giving this idea and then it's like run with it. So it takes a little pressure off. But then this year I was like, oh, I got to think of the theme. And so while folks are thinking of questions, I don't know if anybody has questions. You know, last year at the conference, I came to the conference with an idea, but I didn't have it fleshed all the way out. And I kind of did that on purpose because I knew I was going to be in community with folks there. And so over the course of that week before, you know, just kind of bouncing off all the beautiful people that I was surrounded by until the night before the business meeting, we were in our hotel room, you know, still kind of playing around with the ideas. And one thing I will say is anytime you come up with something like this, you know, there's that fear of exclusion, right? Like, who are we leaving out in this call? And so I just want to kind of put that out there, you know, as far as critical race studies in education was really founded by a group of Black folks. And so I just want to recognize, right, like what it means to think about that testimonial, at least my understanding philosophically, is that it's not, you know, just for Spanish-speaking folks or people who do Lat Crit, even though I know that some people might believe that and I respect that. But I just kind of wanted to say that, you know, when I thought about it, I definitely was thinking more of an inclusive way of capturing all our work across the, you know, Black and Brown communities, you know, across the globe, really, even though I know we're primarily a U.S. Based group, we do have international folks in our association, which is amazing. We just got a email from some folks from Australia who came last year and are coming back, and they brought youth with them, and that was just really powerful, you know, to be in that kind of global space. So again, just want to say that, you know, same thing last year with the crit walking, you know, it's who are we leaving out? And so if you or you know somebody who, you know, feels that way, you know, express it. You know, we want to hear that, but we also want you to push us, you know, to say like, oh, what are we missing? You know, so of course my positionality as an Afro-Boricua, I, you know, come from that very, that space, that Black and Brown space, but also recognize that using that Spanish word might throw off some folks. And so I'm just kind of recognizing that and saying that if we did, you know, we are, you know, coming from a place of love. And hopefully folks will understand that, you know, we're not trying to exclude anybody, but we know the nature of choosing themes could feel that way sometimes. So I just wanted to kind of put that out there. So I appreciate your words. That's
great. I think that's great, Erica. And just real quick, just to piggyback on that, the fact that it's a Spanish word, but really it's a method and an approach that was brought to the world by an indigenous woman. So I think that's the beauty of the testimonial approach, is that Rigoberta Menchú, who brought that to the world, indigenous woman from Guatemala, using this Spanish colonial language to do what she needed to do. And so I think absolutely using this in an exclusive space, I think is really, really important for the organization to continue to live by its foundational tenets.
Great. Any questions from anybody in the room, either that you feel free to just ask verbally, or if you want to put it in the chat. Correct me if I'm wrong, Dr. Aleman, we're going to wrap up around 4 Central Time, so we have about 8 minutes. But of course, if we have dialogue going, we could keep going. And then, of course, we'll do our due diligence to share this recording, of course, with everybody that was on the call, but with the broader association. So we'll be sending out an email, the same listserv we use for our newsletter. So if you're on this call and you don't get our newsletter, make sure that you reach out to us. I'm actually gonna make sure you have our email or show you where to find it. So if you're on our website and you...
In the meantime, yeah, let's ask questions or anything related to the call or the program or even the organization. I think either in the chat, or if you want to just unmute yourself and just ask. This is the first time we want to do, I think, as Erica mentioned, we want to do more of this, use the Zoom account that we now have and interact more in that way across different topics. And so.
Yeah. And I just highlighted our email. So it's crseainfo@gmail.com. So that is just, if there's anything like general, you could ask there. But yeah, does anybody have anything now that they want to ask? Okay. Anything else that you could think of?
I don't have anything else. I just think that I'm, again, excited about this. Yes. I'm kind of scared. I don't want to screw it up. You did a great job last year, and you've been great to work with. But the logistics is, I think we have a good group of people already, and of course we're always asking for more. But the call is and the theme is exciting to me, and I'm interested to see the kind of response we'll get, especially from the East Coast folks. Sometimes it's hard to go across the country, and so while we do. It's going to be interesting to fly into Philly. I guess we'll have another webinar. We'll talk more about once we get a little bit more organized as far as the program to let people know. But flying into Philly and coming down into Delaware, I'm excited about. We went out there and met with some scholars and some of the leadership at UD, and just the welcoming atmosphere and just the energy that was over those couple of days. I'm excited about it, and I know that some UD folks are doing a lot of a lot of praxis work. So they're going to definitely have some space on the plenary that's going to really push us to think in different ways about the kinds of work that we're doing. We're looking at some big keynotes that we're currently reaching out as some of the other plenaries that we have, and then we'll put the program together with lots of space and trying to get people on the program so that they can get institutional funding. And so.
Yes. We had another question about when was the last time we sent a newsletter out? So I just checked quickly on my phone. There was something that went out just this Monday to remind folks about this webinar. So if you didn't get that, make sure you email that CRSEA email so we can make sure you're on the list because that's the same one we use for the newsletter. So even though I'm not sure exactly when the last newsletter was sent out, I want to say it was September. Or maybe October, because I know it was after our retreat. I do know that Oscar Medina, who helps us with that task, he sent something out just this Monday. So again, if you didn't get it, please make sure to let us know. I did want to say one thing about the space. So if you click on conference, we have our accommodations already up. Even though I know registration is not open yet. But if people want to, get an idea of what their budget is for their, different universities, if you get funding or, your institutions, you could look here and get that information. And then very soon, right at the beginning of January, you'll probably get tired of hearing from us because we're just going to be really encouraging people to sign up for membership and conference, which we're bundling this year. We're putting it together. And actually I can share that. Oops, sorry, I thought it was on this link. Those rates with you since we have a couple minutes here. Let me see if I could do this. I am not good with this website. Here it is. So here is our blurb. I'm not sure if the video covers. Can you guys see the whole screen? Okay.
Yeah, we can see it.
Okay, so here you'll see 2020 conference registration will open on the first of the year, and membership will be bundled. Before last year, we used to do that, and then last year we tried something different and we made it separate. It caused more issues than we thought. We thought it'd be a good thing because some people basically talked about how the funding streams are different, right? So at their university, they have different pots for membership versus conference registration. But again, it caused a lot of issues. So this year we're just putting it together. So these are the rates here for early bird. Sorry, I just got a pop-up. Oh, so annoying. Oh, Jesus, sorry, y'all. Okay, so you'll see here, these are our early bird rates. $135 for faculty with conference membership, and for graduate students, $95. Community membership and conference bundle is $65. So those are mostly like K-12 folks, but we get people that run the gamut. We've had senators, we've had, so whoever is not in one of those other two categories. And we really just hope, right, that people do choose the one that's appropriate for them. There's really not a real good way for us to check on that. And then we're asking that faculty pay for the pre-conference. We do have a couple things that cost money that day. So we're just trying to kind of break even though we ask, graduate students don't pay for that pre-conference. We're asking faculty to do that. And then I'm sorry, the spacing is a little weird here. But after April 27th, if you still haven't registered, then these are the rates. They go up slightly for graduate students, a little more for faculty. The community one stays the same, and then the faculty pre-conference goes up just $10 to $30. So all of this is on our website, and then soon, again, by January 1st, there will be the actual forms to pay and get everything situated. So yeah, and we had some questions, so let me get back to that chat room here. Bear with me. Okay, well, thank you very much. We get a little shout out.
Couple shout outs, yeah.
We're getting thank yous. We really appreciate it. So yeah, just help us keep the momentum alive. I love the idea of having another one around logistics of space, flying into Philly, getting to Delaware, which we're working on that now. I actually just, when we were there for the retreat, I took the train for the first time. Even though I lived in Philly for almost 10 years, I really didn't go to Delaware that much. But I took the train, I took the SEPTA. It was like cheap. It was like $3, $6. Wow. I can't remember now. But it was really cheap. It was very easy. And the university shuttle actually goes to the train station. So yeah, we'll definitely do one. I think that's a great idea. Maybe we could have somebody local on the call to help us with that. And just kind of figuring out hotels, airports, shuttles. So that's a really great idea. We'll do that soon. Any other questions from folks? Okay.
Thanks everybody for spending time with us.
Yeah. So right now, just get the word out. Yeah. Proposals. We want to get a lot of them.
Before Thanksgiving, yeah.
We're going to do the work on our end of getting reviewers, and we look forward to seeing everybody's lovely submissions. Okay. Anything else before I close the call? Okay. Thanks
for organizing it. Take care.
November 22nd.